Welcome to Just Verdicts with your host, Brendan Lupetin, a podcast dedicated to the pursuit of just verdicts for just cases. Join us for in-depth interviews and discussions of cutting-edge trial strategies that will give you the keys to conquering the courtroom. Produced and powered by LawPods.
Welcome back to Just Verdicts. I'm your host, Brendan Lupetin, and today, sitting down across the state, that is, with attorney Jordan Strokovsky from his own law firm, superstar stud trial attorney, young guy, new baby, amazing wife, ripping verdicts. We're here to talk about a monster verdict that he got in the Eddie Parks versus Temple University hospital case. Jordan, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, Brian. It's an honor.
This is a big verdict, and that's going to make a couple of my listeners very excited. They like these big, giant verdict cases. Jared, if you're listening. But Jordan, let's talk about you, man. So what's the name of your law firm?
My firm's called Strokovsky, LLC.
And how long have you, been out running your own firm, doing your own thing?
6 years and 2 months. So 2019, I went out on my own.
And I mean, you're a young guy. I think you were telling me you graduated law school in 14?
Yeah.
What was the impetus at 4 years out to, go do it on your own?
If I was talking to Jordan in his first or second year of law school, I probably would be like, what? You're waiting 4 years before you're going out on my own? Because in my mind, it's like, I can figure this out. Like, I can figure this out in like a year. Obviously, that's not the case. I was pretty fortunate to even be able to feel like I could go out on my own after 4 years. But maybe it's because, my dad was a lawyer, a really good lawyer. He never pushed the law on me. But, I think his skills and his love for the law would always kind of rub off on me. And he had his own firm too. And so maybe that kind of gave me the confidence that my dad had his own firm. Why can't I have my own firm? And he was in a different area of law, different location. And I'm actually so thankful, and no disrespect to anybody who inherits a law firm, right? But even when I was 5 years old and wanted to be a trial lawyer, like my dad, he made very clear, you're not going to be working for me. You're not going to be taking over my firm. Even when I was looking for my first clerkship as my first summer, I was having trouble at first. And I'm like, Dad, can I just, if I have to, can I work for you over the summer? He's like, no, you can't. You gotta find your own way. Or Dad, you have a friend who can help me, find me a job. No, you gotta do this on your own. And I think it made me stronger for it. But I went into law school. I took some time off. I was a college dropout for a few years, kind of having maybe a midlife crisis, at the quarter life. But it kind of really grounded me and made me appreciate what I want in life and what I want to stand for and what I do. Because I think I didn't want to just be a big law lawyer. And maybe if I was 5 and I wanted to be a lawyer, maybe I did want to do that, wear a suit every day, make a lot of money and do that, be in that world. But, when I got life experience, I kind of realized I did not want to be representing corporations. And back then I was quite the idealist. I thought every corporation was really, really bad. And I would even tell people kind of the first year of law school while I was being a lawyer. And I was like, look, I don't know if I can actually take out these evil corporations, but I might be able to give them a smack in the face. And if I can do that, that would be pretty cool. And so I guess I'm fortunate in that for the most part, I always knew what I wanted to do, going into law school. So that allowed me to kind of get internships or, summer jobs or jobs during the year, clerkships that were all kind of in the serious injury space. And I would also spend, I knew I wanted to be a trial lawyer in Philly. So I'd get a ton of internships with judges in Philly doing civil cases. And I would just roam the halls. Or I'd have people running the courts, give me intel on when there'd be a good trial. And I would just, run in and just watch trials. And that also gave me a lot of confidence because, I saw some of the best trial lawyers. I also saw some horrible, people trying cases. Wow, I could, the first trial I saw was a wrongful death case. And really type of case where if it's done half decent, like the whole jury should be bawling by the time you're closing. And like this attorney was just so dry and so boring. It's just like, oh my God, like I hate this. And I remember like being like, if he's the top trial lawyer in Philly, like this is going to be easy. He wasn't the top trial lawyer in Philly, I came to learn. But, like seeing experiences like, or seeing that like gave me confidence, I guess. And then I worked for, a few firms, for 4 years. And I didn't have any, well, actually I had one trial, I had a pro bono trial under my belt before I went out on my own. But I did feel like litigation wise, I got a lot of experience and I felt like I was doing things that were well above average, not to sound cocky, but like I would see things that I was doing in my cases that was really like taking them to the next level. And while it's always cool to like have senior attorneys to spitball ideas with and things like that, I felt like weighing the pros and the cons, like I would be better off for my development if I went out on my own. And I'd like to think I've been proving that right, ever since.
When you made that, transition, go hang your own shingle, do your own thing. Did you have some book of business? Did you have some attorneys you felt were going to be able to refer cases to you? I mean, what was your plan, or I don't know, your thoughts as far as like where your pipeline of cases was going to come from, or was it just a strong self-belief that you would make it happen?
Maybe a combo of both. I did have some cases. I don't think I had a ton of cases, but I had some cases. I also had some referral sources, and I felt like where I was working, like it wasn't a bad firm by any means, but I did feel like the attorneys that were sending me cases, they were sending me cases because of me. Like, you have some firms with certain names in the city and people will run to you for business just because of the name you're associated with. But I felt like my referral sources truly believed in me and would continue to bring me cases. And yeah, that proved right. So I guess it kind of was a leap of faith. And don't get me wrong, it's difficult. It was difficult. It still is difficult, but I'm getting there.
A few other things I wanted to just touch on that you mentioned in your kind of backstory there. So one, I mean, you're probably the third or fourth, and I would include myself in this list of, people I've had on the pod who talk about sort of the benefit, coming up of just getting in and watching trials, whether it's through a clerkship and you get an opportunity to be there just in court, whether you're just, making a point to go across the street and sit through trials. I mean, I think that's a pretty invaluable experience, especially when you're first starting to practice. If you want to be a trial lawyer, is just getting a sense of what it feels like in there. And pretty quickly, what's working, what's not working with how the lawyers are doing their thing in trial. And I just think that, I don't know, I think young lawyers are not doing that enough, quite frankly. They're not getting over, they're not sweating these trials and watching what people are up to. And if they did, because a lot of people are talking about, there's, we can't get enough experience and so forth, and it's hard to get into trial. But you can learn a hell of a lot from just going over and seeing what people are doing and seeing people do a crappy job in your estimation, or people doing like, oh, that's interesting. Like they seem to be captivating or connecting with that jury.
Absolutely. And it's also a great thing to do if you truly want to be a trial lawyer and also find a job. You see someone you like, they might hire you if you reach out to them and say, hey, I saw you in action. I was really impressed. Let's talk about it. And I think also, even if you're not trying to get hired by those people, like when you're interviewing, like you truly show that you're committed to being a trial lawyer because like you actually went to the courthouse and you're watching trials. When I look back in hindsight, like, yeah, I was very passionate about trials, and I think I conveyed that to whoever I was working for.
Did your pops, like, I know, I don't want to call it tough love, but I think a good lesson that, hey, there's not going to be any nepotism here. You're not coming to work for me or take over this firm. And probably you look back and that was a really good thing that he did. But, notwithstanding all that tough love, it sounds like you looked up to him. You wanted to be an attorney, probably in part because that's what, your dad had done over the years. Did he ever impart any, trial advice on you, or did you pick any up just in the way that he was? Or, I mean, it doesn't sound like he did personal injury necessarily, but it sounds like he was a litigator to some extent.
Yeah, he was a litigator. He was a plaintiff's litigator, employment law. He had some big wins. I think just maybe his personality just kind of rubbed off on me, and maybe his love of the law. Like I remember, him saying what he really liked about the law is how you can kind of weave in creativity, which I think is true. He was brilliant. And also that helps too. I've probably gotten like 5% of his brilliance. So that helps me. But, he passed away, but he was a stoic for sure. Now that I know what a stoic is, and and I imagine he was always authentic, and I imagine he was always doing what he felt was right. And so that's kind of how I envision myself as a trial lawyer as well. Like I'm not trying to BS, wins. I'm not trying to steal wins. Like I genuinely want there to be justice, and I genuinely believe my clients deserve justice. And then also, like, he had a certain coolness about him where, like, he won a very high profile, like, record trial that had national attention. And honestly, I hate to say this, but, like, I didn't think he was going to win just because the odds were so stacked against him, it seemed. Like, I was really scared for him, actually. And then he wins. He hits this, like, it's a huge win. And I see it pop up on the news feed, and I call him. I'm like, Dad, oh my God, like you won. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. And he's just like, Jordan, you win some, you lose some. I'm just going to go home and get some sleep. Like he was a cool dude, because so many people would be, especially in today's world, they'd be like, let's go on the media circuit. Let's get the news wire out. Let's go on Oprah. Let's go on CNN. And he's just like, I'm tired. I just want to get some sleep. And then he actually was like, Jordan, you've been working too hard lately. This one boss you're working under, he's too tough on you. I hope you're getting some rest. Right.
Are you noticing, I mean, you're young in your career, but, we're going to talk about a big one that you've already hit for, and you've, had some other great verdicts, and you're working on big cases. Are you finding that, when you get the win, you're going on that super high, and if you're ever losing, you're getting into that super low spot? And I say that, in comparison to your dad's sort of stoic approach of it, of seemingly not getting too high and presumably not getting too low when things didn't go his way, which is something personally I'm striving to improve on.
Yeah, no, I certainly feel like a lot of pressure, especially, after a big win like that. I feel like, wow, maybe there are even some people out there hoping that you're going to really get humbled and have like a big loss. And then also I feel like, I don't even know if I should even say this, but like, my first trial, I hit for like $350,000 on like a premises liability case. And the trial after that, I got like a verdict about 10 times higher. And then this trial was about 10 times higher. And it's like, great. So does that mean my next trial, I need to hit for like $300 million for that to be like on par with what I'm doing? Or like, it's so, but I do something that I think has been a big belief in mine or ideology, is just really just doing your best, and whatever happens, happens. But as long as you do your best and put in your best effort, like what else can you do? And that's kind of been my mindset ever since I went to law school, because, I was a college dropout. I failed classes. I failed at some other pursuits when I took time off from college. And when I look back at it, it was really just because I didn't have a plan in place, or I didn't put in any effort. Like I just self-sabotaged. And like, that was the first time in my life I ever felt like I failed at something. And I even said this in my law school letter, because I had a horrible GPA. I had like a really good LSAT, but a horrible GPA. And so like the letter I would write to folks is like, look, I know that my grades stink, but what I can tell you is that like, I know what it feels like to fail without giving your best effort. And all I can say is, going forward, like that's never going to happen again. And I really I'm so busy sometimes. And actually, thank goodness, like this has been one of my easier weeks this week. So I'm really glad we got to do this. But I no matter what happens in my career, like I know that I'm giving it my best. So like whatever happens, happens. Like I hope a lot of great things happen, but I'm never going to be like, man, I didn't put in enough effort, because I know I'm giving it 100% every day.
Yeah, everything you just said super resonated with me. I actually floundered in law school and didn't know, but it wasn't until I tried my first case, kind of started to figure out what I wanted to do, but I don't know, just that mindset of being okay with what you're putting in, process over the product of it, which, took me a long time to kind of understand, because to me for a long time it was like, if you don't get the verdict, then it didn't really matter. Like you suck, you failed. And over time, it's dawned on me more that there's a lot of uncertainty in trial. There's a lot of randomness and luck that goes into it. I mean, obviously, luck is the residue of design and planning and the effort and everything you put into it. And the more that you prepare and plan and put in the effort, the greater your chances overall of getting these great outcomes. But you can't necessarily control it a lot of times. And I think recognizing that, and that fits with, that you've been on this trajectory of, one win, next one's 10 times, next one's 10 times. And you start to get these, crazy thoughts in your mind of like, well, am I going to be a failure if I never hit that next one for, some multiple of where I've been? And how do I surpass that? And is this it? Am I ever going to beat that kind of thing? And it gets in your head. But I think looking back on where, you've come from, I mean, you're 11 years in and have already accomplished things that, 99.9% of trial attorneys out there would, they'd give their leg to have that, but kind of realizing that that's not really what it's about. And that stoicism that you talked about, your dad incorporating that, I think is kind of so critical from our mental health and just, good mindset perspective, to continue doing this. So I think that's awesome to hear. But enough, waxing philosophic about trial practice. Let's talk about the Eddie Parks versus Temple University Hospital case. So can you tell us, I always like to hear, like, how's this case come in? So it looks like the events happened in 18. So somehow Eddie Parks makes his way to you sometime after 2018, which means you're pretty early on in your solo practice. So how's the case come to you? What are you thinking when you first kind of hear the facts, and what are the basic facts that you first learn about it?
So you're absolutely right. This was actually 2 months into starting my own firm when the call came in. And I look back at it, like, for so many reasons, it's like, and my referral partner who referred to me is like, dude, can you imagine if I sent you this case while you're still working at another firm?
Right.
Like, no. But anyway, so I get the call from my referral partner. And the key things that I remember is just basically like, I went to the hospital, my leg was in so much pain. I'm asking them for help. They're not doing anything. I lost my leg. Right. And then I also, I think he was 27 at the time.
Young guy.
So, and even today, when I look back, cause I know you do it too, Brendan, you probably look through maybe potentially thousands of leads a year. And so many of them are so obviously not cases, or even the ones that you want to be cases. You look into it, so often they don't end up being cases. And in my experience, at least 90% of the best cases that I have, I knew within a few minutes, this just does not sound right. And so this is a situation where it seems like at least at the time, an otherwise healthy, 27-year-old male goes to the hospital and then leaves without his leg. That just doesn't add up to me. And I mean, I'm hungry now, but trust me, was I hungrier then? Maybe, because I literally sprinted to his house in Southwest Philly, and brought I had a paralegal doctor at the time, and I had him come with me, and we signed it up, and I got all the medical authorizations that day. And that's another experience in of itself, and headache, getting medical records for these cases. And I was hands-on, I was able to get the medical records in less than 2 weeks.
It's impressive.
And I already had experts lined up, and I got the case reviewed, I think, in less than a week once I got the medical records, and I got the green light soon after that. And I filed suit. So I got the case in May. I filed suit in June. And it was just a wild ride since. And so that's how I got the case, and that's how it started.
So tell us, the gist of it. So Eddie, he's 27, young guy. I saw that he was a medical assistant, and he finds his way to you, and you quickly are like, this has got to be a case. So as you dig into it, you get the records. What do you discover had happened to this poor guy?
Sure. And bear in mind too, this is this is several years later, but I think I remember it pretty well. But in a nutshell, he was at a house party in North Philadelphia, and there was some sort of altercation. He got kicked in the leg. After that, he wasn't able to walk, and he was in excruciating pain. He goes to Temple Hospital, and his account was they tried discharging me like within the first hour. Like he's like, I showed up there. They accused me of being like pill seeking. There's nothing wrong with you. We're sending you home. And, I think Temple denies that to some degree. But if you look in the medical records, you will see that within like 40 minutes or so of him coming to the ER, the physician's assistant who saw him put in an order to discharge him, just give him a cam boot. So I guess he just came in, they did an x-ray. It's not broken. Like, what do you want from us? Like, we're going to discharge you. And for my client's account, it was his advocacy. Like, no, I'm not, like, you're not discharging me. Like, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm in excruciating pain. I can't put any weight on my leg. So that was the issue with the ER team. But what actually happened to Eddie was when he got in that altercation, he dislocated his knee and it popped back into place. And actually, I think I had this from the trial. Still have the,
oh, nice. A little demonstrative.
Yeah. So, this doesn't shift out of place like a dislocation, but behind the knee is the popliteal artery. So that gives, the blood, the oxygen to your leg. And knee dislocations, what's fascinating about them is a lot of times they can spontaneously pop back into place. So you can be at the hospital and you won't have an obvious knee dislocation, but while knee dislocation is bad, what's a lot worse from a knee dislocation is an injury to the popliteal artery. And so his popliteal artery was severed. It's almost like a tight string, and then it just gets cut when it goes back and into place. But anyway, after the ER team finally realized, like, okay, this guy's not letting us discharge him, we need to admit him. Let's get orthopedics involved. So then they admit him to orthopedics. And due to his excruciating pain, on their differential was always compartment syndrome. And that is true to some degree. He was dealing with some form of compartment syndrome, but what they never tried to understand is how in the world does he have compartment syndrome? Because usually if you have compartment syndrome, we're talking like a high velocity, high energy injury. Like, did he just get run over by a truck? That's the type of thing like, oh, we're looking at compartment syndrome, where he has a serious break of the leg. We're looking for compartment syndrome. But here, there was no obvious, break or things like that. And nobody was thinking like, how could he be, having these symptoms of compartment syndrome? And they never did a proper knee exam. And one thing was like, oh, well, he was in too much pain, we couldn't do it. And it's like, well, you also happened to stick him with a needle to test his compartment pressures, but you couldn't test the laxity of his knee. But anyway, so he's dealing in excruciating pain for several hours. And then finally they make the call, okay, he has compartment syndrome, call in the attending, let's do the surgery. And, I think there are many levels of malpractice here, but maybe the closest thing we have to a smoking gun is the surgery itself, because the attending comes in. He probably didn't do his due diligence, has no clue what actually happened prior. All he hears is compartment syndrome. Okay, I'm going to come in and do a fasciotomy. But his op note notes that, when he's under anesthesia, so that's where he's, lifeless basically. So that's where they actually can, examine the knee. And so he noticed that he lifted his leg up and his knee gave out. Mm. And then they tested it and he had concern, that a couple ligaments, were having issues. And didn't put two and two together that oh, that's a sign that this ding, 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 knee dislocation, that's why his ligaments are having issues. That's what's causing all this blood to fill up his compartments to cause compartment syndrome. We finally know why he has it. Because the whole time they're thinking how is he having compartment syndrome? But they just noted that, said, okay, let's get him an MRI later on. And that's that. And then when they were still doing the fasciotomy, they noticed this huge hematoma, this huge pool of blood, which again, where's what's that? Like, that's really odd. And all they did was just evacuate it and just note it and move on. But I actually had a really cool animation for trial. I don't have it available right now. I apologize. But like, if you look at the location of the hematoma, it's like literally right where the popliteal artery and the knee are. So like, it's again, like ding, 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 ding. Like, oh boy, we got a vascular issue here. We got to repair this. But it was just like, we noted these odd findings. And also he said something like, I suspect he may have a knee dislocation that's spontaneously, popped back into place, but no further investigation. And then the attending claims, I told my team, keep a close eye on him. There's no note, to keep a close eye on him. And they send him back in the recovery room. And then several hours later, the residents called in, oh no, his leg is completely cold and pulseless. And then that's when they bring vascular in. They try to, revive the leg. And unfortunately, it's too late. And, what I also thought was really important that, I think the defense wanted me to gloss over, but I wouldn't gloss over, it wasn't just like an amputation case. He went through living hell for several weeks before that amputation because, the fasciotomy, usually they suture you up. And so it's not too bad. But because essentially his leg was dead and it was dealing with infection, his leg was like completely like spread out and open. Like, it was pretty horrific. And, frankly, the medical team were gaslighting him. Like, oh, we're so sorry, Mr. Parks. We did everything we could. These things just happen, like having his gaslighting his family. His family's even starting to be like, Eddie, just these things happen, right? They didn't do anything wrong. But he went through like multiple debridements, cutting extensive flesh, from his leg and, telling him, oh, we might be able to save your leg. And, oh, we got to do another procedure. And then it just reached a point where it's like, dude, you're so infected right now. Like, you're going to die if we don't cut your leg off. And then imagine like that experience, like being told like, we're going to cut your leg off or you're going to die. And so that's kind of like something I really focused on at trial, was not just like dealing with life after the amputation, but like just the horrors of being like strapped to a hospital bed for weeks, looking at this, dealing with this, and, what's like 1 minute of that worth. And, he lived this for weeks at a time, but then you got a through the leg or through the knee amputation. And, the rest was, I guess, standard for amputees, learning how to walk again, like basically being a baby and having to learn everything again. And from being like a grown man wanting to start his life, like having a job that he liked, he had passions, he had friends, he had family. His girlfriend, he just found out like a month or just before this happened, he found out his girlfriend was pregnant. Like, he was going to be a dad, like so much to look forward to in life. And so much, so much ambition. So then it's just like, your life's over. Like, you have no leg, you can't do anything. You don't feel like you're a man. You're in constant pain. You're dealing with phantom pain. You're dealing with nerve pain. You can't even get up out of bed to like cradle your baby when your baby's crying at night. You can't even go to OB appointments while your girlfriend's pregnant. Like, you can't do anything. And, as I conveyed, I tried to do it in the simplest ways to the jury, but like his life was shattered, and I felt like I didn't need to go in a crazy amount of detail because I felt like I think the jury can figure that out for themselves if I give them the main facts that they can make reasonable inferences from.
So you jump on the case. What led Eddie? I mean, because talk about him getting gaslit, which happens to a lot of people. Oh, this bad things happen. It's just unfortunate. This was unavoidable, freak accident type of thing. I mean, was it just the the gravity of his loss that led him to say, I got to have somebody take a look at this? Or what prompted him? Did he get a letter from the hospital? Did somebody say to him, pull him aside, say, hey, man, you should talk to a lawyer? What led him to explore talking with somebody that knows what they're doing to figure out if maybe this was medical negligence?
Yeah. And actually, you know what? Come to think of it, I haven't thought of this, or at least haven't thought of this recently. I don't think they ever sent him a letter. So that's actually
problematic.
Temple, you should have reported that. That's definitely a serious event, because I know that the vascular attending and the ortho attending were texting each other saying, "Hey, we got to put risk management on notice here." And then they admitted liability. So, hey, Temple, you never reported this.
You're welcome for that reminder, Jordan.
Yeah.
but so he doesn't get the letter.
He never got a letter.
How's he start to put two
I
and two
don't think
together?
he ever got a letter. And I think just like, yeah, it's kind of what he thought. Like, it's just, he felt like something was wrong. And God bless him for not giving up on that pursuit. Like, I don't even want to picture a world where like nothing happened. And that's the sad thing is like, I'm sure there are a lot of cases out there where nothing happened just because people just didn't want to look into it, or maybe they accepted what was represented to them, that nothing could have been done differently. That's just life. But yeah, and trust me, I think he felt vindicated. I'd say initially, when I first told him that, like, we have a case, and then throughout discovery, when I'm like, hey, I'm getting evidence that further and further corroborates that you're right. And then certainly, while it really messed with him too, is that for 5 years almost, they're denying fault at every single turn, even though the case is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And then like, he's finally ready for like his trial. Like, I don't want this to happen to somebody else. I want to take these guys to trial. And then they're just like, we admit fault. Like, what? For 5 years? Like, we're like, you're telling me in the hospital you didn't do anything wrong. Your pleadings, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm asking them under deposition, under oath, like, did you do anything wrong? Like, no. And then it's like, oh, they know I'm about to tag them in trial, so for strategic reasons, let's admit fault and like hope all this bad stuff goes away so we get a smaller verdict. But nonetheless, like, the whole process really, I think he really felt vindicated, and that's a hell of a feeling to like. I really do believe justice is a thing in this world, and I really believe that he got justice and he knows that. And yeah, I'm just so happy for him.
So let me break down a couple of things there. So one, you mentioned earlier that, and this is often the case in these sort of like disaster scenarios, but there was probably multiple instances and multiple steps where, there was substandard medical care that Eddie received. How did what did you do as far as like focusing that? I mean, were you, saying, was it first in time, most egregious? Were you going with the cumulative aspect of it, that there were so many different points in time that this could have led to a different outcome and didn't? How were you thinking about that? And after you answer that, tell me about sort of your thoughts on, how them admitting fault impacted your view of the trial.
So I definitely saw it as layers of malpractice, and it's almost like so much malpractice, it's like unbelievable. But I guess, hospitals or in the medical field, like other fields, like they have checks and balances, so they have backups that should prevent catastrophic, results. And so I guess when you do see these catastrophic results, maybe it shouldn't be too surprising that there were multiple failures because people weren't covering each other's backs. But, I saw it as, malpractice right from the start with the emergency room. Then the residents of the ortho team handling prior to surgery. Then the surgery is probably, again, that's probably like the smoking gun moment where it's just like, how do you guys talk yourselves out of this one? And then even on top of that, though, was like there were further signs that he was suffering, from a vascular perspective for hours, where he may have still had a chance, to have his leg saved, where they really, still dropped the ball there. And throughout the entirety of the case, for the most part, the defense attorney signaled earlier, like in the midway through the process, like, we understand that we have some potential issues here. Like, why don't we mediate before we even go to depositions? I love it when this happens in some of my cases. Why don't we mediate, right? Like, oh, they're doing me a favor to mediate. Like, we know behind the scenes how horrible our case is for us, but we want to mediate now. Like, we want to be the good guys. And it's like, maybe we can mediate. Do you have any money to offer? Like, no. Why don't we just try to mediate? And then the whole time it was just like, well, this attorney settled a similar case, for under $5 million. So that's what you should be looking at. And this the whole time it was just like, we'd be willing to mediate as long as you concede that you're not going to get more than $5 million. And I was like, no. The future medicals for Eddie were like $6 million. So it's just like we never got anywhere, and we never even had a chance to really explore it. Like I think where we ended up, it was like their final offer was like 3 million, and I went down to 17. So we never even had a chance to like see if we could settle the case. And I literally feel like I had no choice, which I guess is maybe the best way to go into a trial. Like you literally have no choice but to try it, unless you're really gonna punk out and beg your client to take the biggest discount in the world. But preparing for trial, and I'm sure you feel this a lot, Brendan, like before you start that process, that months-long process of really gearing up for trial, like your case can just get stronger and stronger and stronger because it's all you're thinking about. And your belief in the case just gets, larger and larger and larger. So maybe like a year before trial or 6 months before trial, if there were to be like real settlement negotiations, I may have thought the case was worth a lot less than what it actually was worth because like I wasn't immersed in the case. And then I start going through the process, and don't get me wrong, like it was the most difficult process ever in my career, maybe ever in my life, like running a law firm by myself, handling all my other cases while focusing solely on this trial. And this is my first med mal trial. And the sweetener on the top two is like my dad just died. So I was like reeling with that as well. So like it was almost like getting shot somewhere and like dealing with that wound while still pressing forward. But anyway, I'm just like working on the case, and it was a Goliath of a case. Like it was a huge case. But I just kept thinking, like, at first I was like scared, like I got to get a lot together. But as I got closer and closer to trial, I'm like, okay, it's coming together. And I would tell my referral partner, like, I think I'm going to hit him for 50 million. Like, I think I had like, there's to this day, I don't think Temple has any clue, like the stuff I had on them. Like some of their experts, I was going to destroy them, like absolutely destroy them. Or maybe they knew that because maybe that's why they admitted fault. But I literally thought like the care provided was so horrendous. And then their defenses were so ticky-tacky, nickel and dime, like so degrading. I'm like, you guys are going to get lit up. I didn't tell them that, of course. I'm just focused on doing my job. But don't get me wrong, I was pushed to the brink. Like I was on the brink of exhaustion, but like I was getting there. I was ready to try this case. And then like just before jury selection, or maybe like a week before jury selection, something like that. And at that time, mind you, I think their only offer was $1 million. So I was like 1 million to 19. I get a call from the defense attorney who previously was like, I don't know why you don't want to mediate this case. Like, even if you win, we're just going to drag your case on appeal for years and your client will get a dime. And that upset me. But anyway, I get a call and it's just like, just so you know, we're admitting fault, or the orthopedic surgeon's admitting fault for trial, and you should let everybody else out. And I pause and I'm like, okay, let me think about this. And he goes, no, like there's nothing to think about. Like we are admitting fault. And I just went like, okay. And then like I gave that some thought. And then he sent me a letter, which was important in the post-trial motions. But like he sent me a follow-up letter, something along the lines of like, Mr. Strokovsky, Dr. Leray is admitting fault. And just so you know, him and the hospital, they have $85 million of insurance. So we can cover any verdict just with those people. So you might as well let the ER attending out. And I think there was another doctor out or a PA out. And I even put in there like a nice little threat that like, and as you know, like the more people you keep in, the more likely there's to be appellate issues, down the road. And so I'm thinking about what I should do. And while I felt like I had a very strong liability case against everyone, it's just like they're kind of giving you a win. It's like a hedge, but it's like I'd have to be the most brazen person ever to be like, nah, screw you, screw your admission. Like I'm still trying my case like full throttle on liability, right? So, it's like they admit liability, like you got to take it. It's like fine, you have 85 million in coverage. Like we'll let these other doctors out, and it's essentially just going to be a damages case. But I will say this is like a week before trial. And so like my themes, my strategy, my order of witnesses, like all of that just like completely thrown out. And while I did have, it's comforting to some degree that like, okay, well, I know I'm getting my costs back at least, right? I'm not walking away with nothing, but it's also like the wind was taken out of my sails, because it's like, again, before this, I'm like 50 millions in my mind. And I think some people are painting this defense attorney as afterwards as like the world's worst attorney because of what happened. But like, if he had anything to do with admitting fault, I respectfully think he saved the hospital $25 million, because I really believed I was going to hit him for 50. And oddly enough, when they admitted fault, in my mind, I was kind of like, I think I need to get 25 now. It's just a lucky guess. But then it all kind of framed, not just like, originally the main focus was fault and establishing fault, egregious fault. And then it all turned to damages, where I'm sure, they were just going to get up and say, hey, we admit fault, we're the good guys, like, just be fair here in assessing his damages. And he's really not that bad. He's thriving in life. He can do whatever he wants. And that was just so stupid for their defense, respectfully. Like, oh, he could still be an Olympian in the Special Olympics or something like that. Like,
oh boy.
But anyway, so I was a little conflicting. Like, even on the phone, like in the back of my mind, respectfully, it's like, you guys are admitting fault. And when you admit fault, you're basically like putting the baseball on a tee and just, seeing how far I can hit it, or like you're seeing how hard I can punch you. I'm not a fighter in real life, but like in this law game, it's like, dude, you guys are going to get hit. Like, I don't think you know what you're doing. But
how did you pivot? How did you, your mindset's like all liability, all aggravation. Now that's not there. So, I mean, do you talk with people you'd never tried? I mean, this is your first med mal case. Now they've admitted fault. That literally happens like never. You may never have that happen in your career again.
Right.
And now it's a damages case. So how do you get yourself sort of reframed on how you're going to convey this, and how are you going to approach your opening and your trial to the jury?
Sure. And, I probably should have brushed up on my opening in advance of this, but, the pivot was like, look, we understand that, this case is different. They admitted fault, but like, just because they admitted fault, that does not mean that like justice has been achieved. And I understand among trial lawyers is this term like 100% justice or full justice. Or maybe I heard that casually and it stuck with me, but I didn't remember like ever hearing that before. But that's kind of the sentiment that I was trying to convey to them, is like, look, just because they admit fault, like that doesn't mean that they can get away with like a discounted verdict. Like, that is not justice. And like one penny less than what you feel like this man truly deserves, like that is not justice. Like, we are here for justice. Like, my client is not he doesn't deserve a handout, but he's also not, undeserving of justice. And this big corporation, like, they're not above the law. Like, they need to be held accountable. So like, I won't get to tell you, what they did wrong, but they admitted 100% fault. So you need to pay this man 100%, of what he went through. And I didn't say pay, but like, and also it's symbolic too. And this is truly true. Like, in our civil justice system, I know tort reformists and things like that, they want to try to pin it out like, oh, it's just about nuclear verdicts or getting payday or generational wealth, blah, 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 blah. But like, no, the reality is like, we don't live in a system where if a person loses their leg, you cut off the other person's leg, or they go to jail for 5 years. Like, literally, your only chance of justice is a number that the jury gives you. And while that number has financial value, it has symbolic value of, yes, we heard you. Yes, you are deserving of justice. And yes, we are going to give you what we feel symbolizes 100% of the loss that you went through and will go through. And, I simplified it too in like, 3 or 4 key things. Like, he lost his livelihood. He lost his passion. He kind of lost his family and friends because he kind of went from a social happy-go-lucky guy to being a loner. And, his life was so much ambition and so much optimism is now just a life of disability, pain, and hardship. And it's only going to get worse. And I also think that, I wasn't trying to play any games. I was trying to be authentic, and I was trying to keep things simple and truthful. And I just literally just told the jury, like, I just want you to put thought into this. I don't care what number you come up with. I just want you to be able to say, we put real thought into this. We believe this is a just result. Where I felt like kind of the defense was literally, and I kind of made that a side theme, is that like they're literally trying to nickel and dime, like we'll admit fault, but we're going to nickel and dime them in every single which way. And so that's kind of like my I guess main approach. And then also too, in terms of like witnesses, I suspect Temple was banking on maybe my client presenting really poorly at trial, because you could see like in medical records and also at his defense medical exam, like there were some issues where you could say maybe he had an outburst or maybe he was provoked and could be perceived as not acting that well behaved or being angry and things like that. So maybe they were hoping he would flip out at trial. And also too, he wasn't a horrible speaker, but and also too, I read this and I think I read this after the fact, but I guess it's kind of a thing. Like you don't want necessarily the plaintiff to do all the talking and kind of gain pity for themselves. But I guess I agreed with that thought, because it's like, I don't want him on the stand for hours talking about his life. And honestly, I don't know if he would be willing to even say everything that's going on with his life, because he was a proud man. And so I had his father, I had his mother, I had his girlfriend, and they all kind of would add certain layers to the story. So the father was there every single day at the hospital, watching his son in pain, crying, having those conversations about losing your leg and things like that. Or at one point he was septic and had to be strapped to a hospital bed. And I'm like, wow, like, can you imagine that type of scene? It's like a horror movie. I said that in my closing, like his legs completely sliced open, and he's strapped to a bed. He's got restraints on. These doctors are like gaslighting him, and they just keep butchering his leg over and over and over again. And then it's like, we're going to cut your leg off. Like, how does it get worse than that? But anyway, he started the trial off, the father. And like, I thought the opening went really well. The jurors were like nodding, which that was a first for me. I've had jurors nod in my closing, but to nod in the opening, I'm like, this might be good. But the father kind of like short and sweet, like setting that stage, what happened in the hospital, how his observations, how his life changed, from the kid he knew to the man he now is. Like, it was probably short and sweet, but like it was an uppercut, like right away. Like it was an emotional uppercut. And then I weaved in my physiatrist, who very plainly stated, all the difficulties he's going to deal with, and my life care planner, then the girlfriend talking about, the differences in his life. And then I put Eddie on, and he was only on for, I think, 10 minutes. And again, I don't try to reach. I try to be very fair and simple. So like, I asked all questions that really you couldn't really cross-examine them on, because they were all true. They're all like, do you not like how does it make you feel not having your leg? Not good. Like, how does it feel looking in the mirror? Like, I don't feel good. Like, has this impacted your life? Like, yes. Just simple questions like that, where the defense really on a lot of these directs, I just kept it so simple. The defense really couldn't really ask anything. And a couple of times they would try to cross, and it would kind of blow up in their faces. But I don't know if they were planning that my client was going to explode in the courtroom, but like got him up there for 10 minutes and then literally, cross-examination, like no questions. And then like, boom, he's done.
They didn't even ask him anything on cross.
There really wasn't anything to ask him.
Yeah. And then what did they do? They put themselves in a tough spot. So a couple of different things. On admitting fault, so you didn't even have to prove causation necessarily, right? Right.
We and that was a big thing too. It's like, I'm still bringing my experts in if you're not admitting causation. So yeah, so they conceded that the debridements and the amputation
were related from their fault. Okay. So what did they call anybody in their case?
Yeah. So they started off with their physiatrist. And it did not go well for them. So they had a physiatrist, they had their life care planner, and then they were slated to have an economist. So I was told by the jury after, like literally within the first minute of my cross of their physiatrist, they lost all credibility in the defense's case because it was just a ridiculous report. It just said that like he could do everything. It's basically like, yeah, we agree he's going to need prosthetics for the rest of his life and he might have some pain, but he can do anything. He has zero limitations. He can do any job. We didn't have a vocational claim. I didn't think that was a strong enough claim. I don't think it's worthwhile to bring in that stuff when pain and suffering and future medicals were so serious. But nonetheless, like not being able to work is a non-economic, or it's pain and suffering, loss of life's pleasure. So that was brought in a little bit. But I think on voir dire for him, you know, I might have irritated him a little bit because my physiatrist is actually out of Pittsburgh, Dr. Marianne McNevich. She's fantastic, but her whole life, 40 years of being a doctor, primarily committed to helping amputees. Where this guy, maybe he moonlights at a clinic once a month helping amputees. And, you know, he's talking himself up like he's a big amputee guy. But he works, I think the name of this practice was like Delaware Valley Spine, something like that, Spine Center, something like that. And then you go on their website, it says, all we do is spine. You know, so you got pretty irritated with me where it's like on your website, you're a spine guy. Your company's motto is all we do is spine. Well, that's not true. It's like, okay, so you're just lying to the public on what you do. But then in the real cross, after he was qualified, he put in his report something like Eddie Parks can do anything he wants. He can have any job he wants. And, you know, I was trying to be myself. Like I can be theatric, don't get me wrong, but like I'm a pretty chill guy for the most part. And so I'm just sitting in my chair at the table, the microphone, and I'm just like, so Dr. Sarlo, like you wrote a report, right? Like, yeah. And your report says that Eddie Parks can do anything he wants in life. Yeah, he can. And so he can have any job that he wants. Yeah. And so I said, like, I think the first question I asked, like, so he can be a fireman? Yeah, he can be a fireman. So he can be a fireman, like kicking down doors and like running up stories, like and burning buildings and saving people. Like, yeah, of course he can. Like, okay. I'm like, can he be a police officer? Yeah. I'm like, he can be a police officer, like running down the street after bad guys with a gun. Like, yeah. And I was like, could he be a bike messenger? You know, darting in and out of city streets. Like, yeah, he can do anything. Could he be a union carpenter, working on steel beams, like 50 stories up? Like, yeah. Can he be a bar back, pulling up kegs? And I'm just thinking of like random jobs that I know of or that I've had in the past. I was a bar back in the past, and I almost was a bike messenger before I realized I was probably going to get hit by a car. And there was a lot of other ridiculous things, but that was like, I just hit him with that in the first minute. And then I went through some of the medical records because they were disingenuous how they're portraying, what was going on. But yeah, so like not to be arrogant or whatever, I think I did a very effective job just like destroying their main expert. And then honestly, like they had their life care planner coming up next. Like she looked scared.
You're right.
She looked very, very scared. Like she kind of turned into like a little sheep. And like I was playing on the themes of like, again, nickel and diming, where it's like literally like even in their supplemental reports, they find ways to like put less on the plan. It's like, you guys are kidding me. Like they wouldn't even give the man like a wheelchair. Like that's like you get one set of crutches your whole life. You get a wheelchair. You get no help when you're older. Like it was just crazy. I was just exposing like literally every single which way where you could do something for or against Eddie. Coincidentally, it's always against Eddie. Like he doesn't need this. And then they were also, they were slated to call their economists. And back to the nickel and dime theme. So I guess the economist, my expert economist, I think he has a very pragmatic approach with projections. He understands, I guess, that each year can fluctuate with rates and things like that. So he picks like the average over a 10-year span, which I think is very fair. Now their expert, I guess because of the year of the first reports, the rates, I guess, were really low. So the future projections with inflation, if you use that year, would not be that great for Eddie, right? So he just used that 1 year. I'm basing it off the current year. That's what we're doing, okay? But because of COVID, trials were delayed like an extra year. So, the reports may have been in 2022, the trial wasn't until 2023. So then you get these updated reports, and the year for 2023 was the best year ever, probably, if you're a plaintiff, right? Because it's the highest rates. But did that economist use that year in making the projections? Like, no, then he started using an average. And so when my expert was up there, I had him talk a little bit about the defense expert's report. And we exposed that, like, if he were to use his own logic from the first report into a second report, the numbers would be the highest. It would be higher than my experts. And I think because we exposed that, the defense didn't even call their economist. And that's a whole other thing. I was pretty furious in my rebuttal and closing. The defense attorney basically made up his own math and his own report over the lunch break before closing, and he presented it to the jury as like the economic, inflation plan. It was pretty ridiculous. I was a little upset that it was permitted, but I addressed it in rebuttal.
So what kind of jurors were you looking for, like in voir dire? Did you have a sense of the type of people, or did you think it didn't necessarily matter because most people were going to get this? Or was there anybody you were, the types of people or thought processes you were looking to avoid having on your panel?
I don't know if I give as much thought in voir dire as most other folks do. I don't know if that might be a bad thing. I don't know if
I'm kind of like you. Yeah, I hope for the best, but I'm not any like amazing picker of panels.
Yeah, I mean, I just look in my experience. I just look for any major red flags where it's like I need to get them off, and then usually there are a few of those, and so I wind up with my jury. So I just want to make sure there's people who can be fair, and the people I struck, I'm trying to remember who they all were. I think one like worked for Temple for like 20 years or something like that. Not for Temple Hospital, but like Temple College or something. And even, I went to Temple, I have family history at Temple, but like, I don't know, that I felt was like a little risky. So I think I struck that person. I don't know if this person was struck for cause or not, but I think there was also someone who, actually, I might be mixing up trials. I honestly can't remember. I just remember there were like 3 people that just were like, ding, 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 ding. Like, no, like if they're not struck for cause, like I need to strike them. And then I'm just left with my jury pool. And I think I remember the defense attorney was kind of cocky. I think he thought he got like a great pool, like, oh, good luck with this. And I didn't really know what to expect. Like I think that the jury 4-person was like either like a speech language pathologist or like a nurse practitioner at a hospital or something like that. So that was, like what's going to happen there. I think there was someone too on the jury whose dad, I think, was a doctor. It's like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen there. There were a couple older people on the jury who looked kind of like the defense attorney. And it's like, I don't know what's going to happen there. So it's not like I felt like I had a stacked jury pool, but I think it all worked out. And even them like having varying ages and stuff, I actually kind of embraced that, we had some older folks on the trial or on the jury because the defense is saying like Eddie's worst part is over. Like he's thriving now. He's got this great microprocessor prosthetic. Like he's thriving. He can drive a car now. He even got on a bike apparently and rode around the block once. Like he's good. And, my expert is like, no, he's not good. Like he's going to overcompensate the rest of his life. His entire body is going to wear and tear and break down. He's going to be a lot worse as he gets older. And I think having older folks on that jury being probably, they could be like, it is like, it gets worse, just
doesn't get better, it gets worse, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly. So
what was the deliberation like? I mean, it's got to be shorter because less questions to answer, right? Less stuff to fight over.
Yeah, it wasn't the longest. I'm trying to think. I think we closed early afternoon. They deliberated for a little bit, and then they came back the next day. I think they deliberated all morning and then concluded right after lunch. And I'm trying to remember the questions they had. I think they had 2 questions. I think one was about attorney's fees. That's probably not the worst question ever. And then another 2 was that this was kind of a very silly issue. And the defense attorney tried to gaslight everybody, making you think it was going to be this huge appellate issue, is that, we use as trial lawyers, we use demonstratives when we try our case, right? And so my economic expert, for med mal cases, as you know, Brennan, like if people don't agree otherwise, you need to have a line by line, year by year for future medicals, for the rest of that person's life. So here we're looking at like 50 years, give or take. And the numbers are crazy, like each year. And so, of course, I had a demonstrative where my expert, shows to the screen, what each year is over time, right?
They probably asked for that, right?
Yeah, so they asked for that. And the defense attorney's like, well, first off, he didn't even call his own economist. And he's like, that would be so unfair if that gets like sent back there because I strategically chose not to have a demonstrative like that. And the judge is like, you really think that the jurors are going to be able to remember like all 50 line items, like all back there right now, like on their own? He's like, yeah, well, they were paying attention. And he's like, no, if they even this issue came up actually before they even asked for it. He's like, if they ask for it, I'm probably going to let them look at it because that, like, it makes no sense.
Right. It's critical, but it's going to be less accurate if you don't give it to them because then they're just going to come up with a random number in their head of what they remember or someone wrote down.
Exactly.
So do they walk it out for the 50 years? They give you the line items for every one of those on the verdict?
Yeah, they actually, it was a little nerve wracking when the verdict was announced and kind of what I mentioned at the beginning, like same philosophy. I was like, you know what? Like, granted, I would have been pretty depressed if there was a number less than 10 million.
Sure.
But I still told myself, it's like, look, I really feel like I did everything I could here. I gave it my all. Like, no matter, I told myself, speaking to myself, like, whatever happens, like, I got to be good with it because I have no regrets. But then, yeah, I'm just kind of like looking down, like, oh boy, here it comes. And then I hear like past, pain and suffering, 11.2 million. I was like,
you're good there.
And then future pain and suffering, 8.8 million. And I'm just like writing it down like, okay, I think that's $20 million. And then, yeah, they ended up literally every single thing that my economist put up, they copied it. So to the penny. And I was trying to write it all down. And then, so then it ended up being 5.9 in future medical. So it was a verdict of 25.9. And then I was like, okay, I can breathe a little bit.
Yeah. Amazing. How did you, I think it sounded like you maybe talked with the jury. Did you get a sense of how they came to consensus on the past and future non-economics?
To some degree. And actually, Brendan, you might be the first person I'm telling this to, at least on a podcast forum. So like, I was actually a little delayed in talking to the jury. Oh man, I'm going to get a little choked up thinking about it. Because like literally when it came in, I thought about like texting my dad. And so I was like choked up. Like I was actually, I was like, I had to stay in the courtroom by myself to like kind of like compose myself for like 15 minutes to like feel normal to like walk back out. So by that time, like some of the jurors already left. But I think like the main takeaways I got was like, they could tell that I really cared about my client and they really felt for him. And they were really like, look, we hope your client knows that we believe we gave him justice. And that was kind of something I told them in the closing was like, I had some pictures of Eddie from before his injury and things like that. And I was like, imagine yourself like seeing Eddie at a Wawa or something, whether it's this Eddie from before the accident or this Eddie that you see here in the courtroom or the Eddie Parks 40 years from now. Like, can you look him in the eye and say, yes, Mr. Parks, like we really thought this through. We really believe we gave you everything that you deserve. And I think that really resonated with the jury. And then they also, they commented that, the whole him being a fireman and police officer and bike messenger, they were like, yeah, we lost all credibility in their case within like 1 minute.
That's pretty cool. And I like that idea of having them imagine if they had to just randomly run into Eddie, being able to look him in the eye and say, yeah, like, we did you right. We did you wrong, or you'd want to go the other direction if you saw Eddie. That's I think that's a really great way to approach that. So really cool story, Jordan. I imagine there was, and I also say, pretty amazing. And I didn't say this earlier. I'm sorry about the passing of your father. It's interesting timing, and I think speaks a lot to you that, you had that new firm, you lose your dad, who's obviously, a huge person in your life. And then you've got the case of the century, and a case of your career, coming up, how that ties in with your dad's career. And, when you saw that huge case of his, and it's really, amazing and fortuitous that it came together the way that it did for you, and in turn for Eddie. It's a really cool story. So was there a lot of appeal issues? I mean, I can't imagine there was too much other than, oh, this is too much money, right? I mean, it's just a remittitor, or was there other BS that they came up with?
There's some other BS. And it was interesting too. Like, nobody, aside from the orthopedic surgeon and the defense attorney, like, nobody was watching the trial for the defense, which I thought was a little weird, because even when my first premises trial, the insurance company sent someone from Boston to watch. I was like, where's everybody? But anyway.
Well, isn't that weird too? Because like, they know they're going to get smacked. So how is somebody not in there kind of watching to see how it's going? I mean, we didn't even talk about that. Did they not make any more offers or anything during the course of the trial?
I think there was like one conversation in the hallway where he was just like, you want too much money. There's no...
It's like bizarro world.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's good luck. That was good fortune for you and Eddie, but I'm sorry to interrupt you. So like, you got the appeal issues.
So like immediately, the verdict is in the legal intelligencer. And I think there was some spokesperson from Temple was like, there were, insane evidentiary errors, so we're going to appeal. And I was like,
what are those?
Like, literally there were none. Like, there were even a couple issues where, like, if I was super aggressive or if I wanted to pull some fast ones, I could have tried to slip things in. But like, I steered clear of that. Like, that's like my worst fear. Like, I never want to get like appealed and get a big verdict just gets taken away. So they already said that, and I'm just like, all right, just stay quiet. Like, let's see what they actually have. And literally, their only real, I think, evidentiary issue was the issue we previously talked about, saying that it was unfair that the jury was allowed to look at a line-by-line itemization of an exhibit that was admitted. And I forget how the defense attorney said it, was like, he wouldn't concede it was a demonstrative exhibit. He was like, this was like a visual perspective for the jury. That's improper. And it's like, no, it's a demonstrative exhibit where in the court's discretion, you're allowed to allow the jury to look at demonstrative exhibits. Like, it was the most ridiculous thing. Like, I'm like, this is it? You guys are publicizing the legal intelligencer that like they're grievous evidentiary issues, and like, that's all you got? Like, seriously? And then even at oral argument, they didn't even argue it. They're like, we'll go out in the briefs for that. Because they knew
it was a dumb argument. Ever. So it was remitted, or was the whole thing there?
So it was remitted, right? But then also they came up with this argument that I'm hoping we'll never see again, is that there's like one line in MCare. It says something to the effect that like, if a verdict is going to be so burdensome to that defendant,
the oppressive to them,
where it will like foreclose on medical services to an entire community, like, then maybe it can get reduced. So that's what they tried to say here. And they provided an affidavit, from some higher up at Temple, like, oh, this is going to impact us, blah, blah, blah. No real specifics at all, right? No specifics at all. They want an evidentiary hearing. Like, they want to drag this out for months and months and months. They brought in 2 additional law firms to handle the post-trial motion. So, like, it's now like me against like 10 other attorneys. And I'm just like, what is this? And then, like, on top of all this, it's like, first off, we're in Philadelphia. Like, there are many hospitals, in the region. Like, if Temple takes a hit, trust me, plenty of other folks are going to be able to help here. But also, Temple didn't take a hit. They're $1 billion corporation. And then what was even crazier is like, guys, you forget the letter you sent me where you go, you better let these other parties out because we've $85 million of insurance where we can easily cover any verdict. Like, are you kidding me? So it's like all this, but you still never know, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
I
you're
really
still
felt
worried.
like, I hate to get like political, but like, I feel like this is the closest thing you come where like you hear stories of like parties trying to steal elections, on complete BS, just like complete BS. And they brought in the most eloquent like speaker I've ever heard on the appeal side, and he really was making this BS sound good. But fortunately, the judge he knew the law, he was going to apply the law, and he wasn't going to have any of their BS. And he called them out, I think, and that was actually pretty cool. So so they file these BS motions, and I immediately jump on it. I'm not celebrating the verdict. I'm already I get kind of trying to be like my dad, I'm going to go home, get some rest. And then the next day it's okay, let's get ready to fight back these motions. And I want my delay damages motion, which was fully granted for 3.7. But we go to, they're asking for an evidentiary hearing. Thank goodness the court, denied that, because I would have just dragged things out another year. But then we finally have oral argument, I think 2 months, 3 months after the verdict. And it's just me. And I just have a feeling, I'm just and by the way, you see kind of propaganda in the legal intelligentsia on this MCARE theory that you've never heard before.
Right.
And amazingly, somehow all of these med-mal defense attorneys are chiming in, saying, oh yeah, this is great. This should definitely be applied here. Yeah, this is new. Of course this is proper. But anyway, I'm just I think something bizarre is going to happen at this hearing. I just have a feeling. And I usually show up to hearings on time, never really that early. But this time I'm I'm going to show up early. So I show up 15 minutes early, and I walk into the courtroom, and immediately I see 20 suits on the defense side, just stare at me. And I'm just what the F?
Yeah.
I'm oh my God. There were a dozen attorneys there. There were 10 hospital executives. It was quite a show of force. And I will say, for a second, I was I flinched a little bit. I was whoa, I didn't even expect this. And then kind of be corny, I remember walking out into the hallway while we were waiting to get started. I'm just you know what? I don't care if they have 1,000 people, because I'm right. My client's right. We did nothing wrong. The law's on our side. I don't care. Bring it on.
Well, it's a great dynamic. It's the David Goliath, one versus many dynamic. I mean, I think that almost plays to your favor with the court.
Yeah. And they got and you still never know until that order comes in, but it did not seem that oral argument went well for them. And prior to that too, they're calling me oh, great job. How about this? We'll give you $10 million today, and we'll do mediation where you can maybe get an additional 10 million. So the most you can get is 20. And
you're why would I do that again?
Yeah. And I guess, I don't know. I guess some folks would be tempted for that. And I don't think my client had zero interest in that anyway, but
yeah, good for him.
But we didn't do anything wrong. If there were issues, maybe, but no, if people follow the law, we deserve everything. Why, we're not doing a discounting it. Maybe if they were hey, we'll give you the actual verdict, maybe not delay damages or something like that. But they wanted, I thought, a serious discount. But, so the hearing I thought went pretty well, but then a month went by and there was still no order yet. And I'm just oh boy,
sweating it.
I'm getting a little nervous. And then finally the order came in. I actually remember I was in Philadelphia. I think it was just it was a summer day. It was very hot out. I think I was just randomly walking home on Spring Garden Street for anybody in the Philadelphia area. And then I just see the order come in on my phone. And that's when I finally celebrated. That's where I fell to the ground and was let's.
Yeah.
I started saying let's go.
You can swear all you want, man.
And then you read the opinion too. It was a 50-page opinion, and the court told it like it was. Plaintiffs tried a very compelling case. Didn't do anything disingenuous. You guys, in how you strategized for the case, how you tried to negotiate previously, how you conducted yourselves at trial, how you conducted yourselves in post-trial motions, disingenuous and incompetent. Frankly, that's I'd say is the elevator version of the 50-page opinion. And then I think a day after that opinion, the head attorney over at Temple, calls me up and is all right, we're not going to, because I knew, but after that, once you have, in this situation, once you have the trial court supporting your case, I would think it'd be impossible to get it overturned.
Yeah,
and I think
they're throwing money away at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they appreciated that as much as they'd want to have it drag out for 3 years, they didn't want to pay millions in interest. So they called me up the next day and they're like, we're going to pay it.
Yeah.
I'm like, everything, like the delay damages, like, yes. The post-judgment interest, like, yes. And I'm like, because it's like $5,000 a day or sort of $20,000 a day, like something like that. Every day that goes by, we don't pay. They're like, yeah, we know. And then, I think within a month of that, they wired all the money in, and then I got the file of, satisfaction of the judgment. And then that's when it's done. Like, you don't celebrate. Like, I don't celebrate after a verdict. I celebrate after that judgment is filed, or satisfaction of judgment is filed, the money's wired, like, then it's done.
Yeah.
And then you can say, all right, good job.
Well, good for you and Eddie, man. Multiple levels of vindication, well-deserved, and great story. And thanks for sharing it, Jordan. I really appreciate it, man. For anybody out there who wants to get a hold of you, pick your brain, talk about this case, other cases, pair up with you, what's the best way for people to get a hold of Jordan Strokovsky?
Well, I appreciate that, Brendan. You can shoot me an email, Jordan, Jordan, at actionafterinjury.com. I don't know if I should do this, but hopefully a lot of fellow trial lawyers here, so you can hit me up on my cell, 215-317-6545.
There you have it. You can.
But it's an honor, Brendan. I mean, you're a serious hitter. I've known about you even from Philly, when I was a rookie lawyer. So, like, it's just an honor to be invited to come on your podcast.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that a lot. It was great to have you, dude. Awesome story. Tim Woden had told me you've got to talk with Jordan. He's awesome. He's got a great story to tell, and you certainly lived up to it. And I will predict that I'll be inviting you back with your next monster verdict in the not too distant future. It looks like you're up to a bunch of awesome stuff. So thanks again. Congrats to the new Bambino, and probably your saintly wife and holding the fort down while you do what you do. And I really appreciate you, man. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, Brendan.
If you enjoy the show, please subscribe to the Just Verdicts podcast on your favorite platform and consider leaving a review. And if you're interested in co-counseling, local counseling, or referring a catastrophic injury case, we'd love to work with you. Call us at 412-281-4100 or visit our attorney referral page at pamedmal.com/refer. Thanks for listening.